In this video, we will go over the subsections of the category organization. We want to look at the organization of a relationship. The first subcategory is type, purpose, and reason. It's important to differentiate what type of a relationship we are in. A romantic relationship is different than a business partnership or a family relationship. And so we can't really apply the same exact principles and dynamics and mechanisms and strategies and tactics to every single relationship. We have to differentiate between these. And for instance, to give you an example, if we are in a romantic relationship, the issue of trust, concern of trust is a different concern compared to a family relationship. Even within a family relationship, if the relationship is between parents and children, is different than the relationship between siblings or between in-laws and oneself. In a partnership, a business partnership too, again, the concern of trust takes a different shape and form. So those are very important issues to pay attention because, of the really level of roles and responsibilities and the influence, if you will, that we have in each of these types of relationships. They differ. Like I mentioned earlier, in a romantic relationship, because the intimacy, the level of intimacy is so intense and unlike any other type of a relationship, where from at multiple levels, whether it is psychologically, again, when we think psychologically, in terms of our belief system and convictions and principles that we believe in, and emotionally, in terms of how we ourselves feel and how we make another person feel habitually, our kind of pet peeves, if you will, and root habits that we engage in. And then physiologically, in terms of our simply the closeness, the physiological closeness that we usually have with a partner, with a romantic partner, and throwing in on top of that more or less the aspirations that individuals have with a romantic partner in establishing a family, establishing a future, looking toward to really capitalizing on the rest of our lives when we enter into a committed relationship. Those are paramount in terms of how they affect the level of trust that a person needs to have from their partner or can have. Versus, when it comes to, for instance, a family relationship, because only a fraction of all these elements are really in place. The ones that I mentioned earlier, for instance, you don't have a physiological closeness, proximity, intimacy in terms of a very almost like a sensual, sexual relationship with family members. That changes the relationship. There is a boundary, there is a certain privacy that is very, very guarded and separate and secretive, if you will, and protected, that nobody is crossing. And therefore also there is less vulnerability and, really just nakedness in terms of a person's true being revealed to another person. You don't have that in a family relationship outside of spouses, and you don't have it in a business partnership relationship. So with that in mind, there is a certain, let's say, security and guardedness and safety that is managed individually and separate from what is being managed in a relationship. To give an example, again, let's say brother-sister relationship, they may certainly manage a lot of stuff about finances with each other. Maybe they are investing in something together. Family business, they may kind of interfere within family business because of certain rights and entitlements that they have with one another. So the level of trust on that is also quite high, and necessity for trust is high, but is not as high, as extreme as in a romantic relationship. When again, also with a business partner relationship, a level of trust is kind of confined to the very narrow window that is defined by their contractual agreement. If two people are investing, two friends, let's say, or neighbors, or just two people in general, somehow they got to know each other and they're investing in a property, in a apartment building. So they confined their need for trust to each other and with each other to the very details of that agreement, whether it is a financial agreement they have, obligations, certain managerial roles, certain duties that they have to fulfill within that business relationship. And then they need to be aware that when we are talking about trust, this is the part that we are talking about. So if you think about it, it's really a spectrum of understanding and of present-mindedness and of reciprocal exchange between individuals when it comes to any type of major concern, such as trust, as it relates to the type of relationship. We need to be able to differentiate those and know our boundaries. Ultimately, it is about establishing boundaries based on those types of relationships. Second item is purpose. A lot of individuals have different purposes in terms of entering in a relationship, and they need to be aware and kind of communicate about those purposes, or a purpose that has led them to enter into a relationship, because they may be quite different. The purpose, a lot of times, a purpose is something that people, as a goal, they set out to achieve down the road. For instance, they enter into a relationship in order to really not feel lonely. So their purpose is that, they just don't want to live this life as a single person. They want to be connected. They want to be pampered or supported. They want to spend the time with somebody else. Now, that is a different purpose than, let's say, procreation and creating a family with offspring that would take over the legacy of the family, and the history of the family, and inherit everything, maybe even, help out with the business or ventures that this family has created, and expands on that idea and creates more assets and wealth and power and stuff like that. That's a different purpose. And then compared to, again, another purpose of perhaps someone entering into a relationship because they feel that if they're not single anymore and they're now going to be married and stronger, then they can kind of go back and help their family of origin even more than they used to. So the purpose becomes more of a fulfillment of an obligation that they feel towards their family of origin. Maybe they have grown up with a lot of deficits, or that idea of kind of giving back or being responsible for the family members, and therefore they see a way out of the predicament they may have. They say this opportunity of entering into a new relationship for the benefits of becoming stronger, becoming more productive, perhaps at times, let's say, marrying into wealth or fame or opportunities, or maybe changing their class, getting into a higher class, if you will. There may be multiple reasons that people may enter into a relationship, but then again, it is linked to at least subconsciously, if not also subconsciously, it is linked to their desire and need to fulfill certain obligations to their family of origin. So, and then the list goes on ad nauseum. It's really as unique as you take it. Every person has more or less a very unique purpose for entering into a relationship. And again, the idea here is, have we checked that with our partner? If that is my purpose the same as my partner's purpose? A lot of times, another example would be, for instance, having your own children, more or less genetically, procreating the next offspring, versus adopting, and that would be more of a next generation, the idea that a couple would have in propagating the next generation by simply adopting kids. Those are two different purposes. A lot of times single mothers or fathers who remarry, again, we have to, and that's a lot of times we see some problems coming from that type of a constellation, where a single parent marrying with a single person who is not a parent may have different purposes again. Again, a lot of it is subconscious, at least on the side of the single parent. There is a natural inclination for protection of their child, of their offspring, that that is an ingrained part of their personality and identity that they are bringing into the new relationship, that the other single partner is really not aware of. And they may be aware of it on the surface, because if a single person gets married to a single parent with their child, they know what they're getting into. However, they may not really have fully thought about the implications of that type of a constellation as it relates to other plans and goals and activities and future aspirations that they need to negotiate with one another, such as, again, some financial arrangements, some spiritual, religious differences that they may have, the idea of, again, inheritance, and even planning, asset planning, or estate planning, or even in times of, not to make it very grim, but people at times really plan well for their death. A lot of times they think about some life insurance or other types of protective measures that they would think would be necessary for themselves to establish, so the next generation is taken care of. Well, but then individuals coming from different angles and perspectives, again, like we mentioned, a single person versus a single parent, they may have different ideas how to go about this, because their purpose why they entered this relationship may be different, such as maybe a single parent would think, well, I'm better off to have a partner, because then I can take care of my children in a much easier, better way, rather than just being a single parent. Maybe that was their purpose of entering this relationship, whereas the single partner may have thought that, well, I'm just falling in love with this person, and then we are going to also have our own children. So they have a little bit of their own individual agenda that they're coming in with that may differ from the single parent. So these are examples of different purposes. And lastly, reasons. People can have different reasons, and that's a little bit different than necessarily the purpose. The reasons are some very clear categories that have been established for, especially for marriage. There are more or less 4 or 5 general reasons why people get into a relationship at all, regardless of the specific person that they get into a relationship with. It's more like the idea of entering into a partnership. And those ideas are a lot of times clearly established from early childhood, if you will, because they're under cultural family influences, and then they evolve over time and certainly can take an individual shape and form. But to begin with, there is usually a religious idea, religious reason. People just kind of may see procreation, marriage as a duty more or less either religiously or existentially, that they just have to do this. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to be comfortable with themselves as a human being. They see procreation, marriage and procreation, as a almost like missing component of an individual's journey of self-actualization. They need to do that. Either it is ordained by a higher being, they call that God, and specifically maybe even written in certain scriptures that, according to the religious upbringing, it's even written somewhere that they need to get married and have children. That's a duty that they need to fulfill. Or it's not written, it's not necessarily propagated that way, but they still believe as part of their self-actualization identity, they need to fulfill that and kind of give back to the society or fulfill their duty as a human being, to have fulfilled that purpose of having invested or put in what they need to do to help the species, if you will, and by creating an offspring and continuing the survivability of the humankind. That's one major reason. The other major reason or idea can be a family obligation, such as, it's the need of the family that I'm fulfilling. It's something that my parents expect me to do. I make them happy. Or again, not just the parents, but also the siblings. It's like a family expectation. It's a norm that everybody needs to adhere to, that makes me, feel better as a person. That again, I have kind of supported my family. I have fulfilled my responsibility of again giving back to a family that has been there for me. I'm kind of fitting in. It creates a sense of belongingness, a sense of fairness and humanity, again, by expanding this family that we have. Everybody, me and my siblings, all are more or less fulfilling this wish of our parents to create more children and creating this almost like clan that we have. And at times that can become the major reason why people actually just marry. The third category or idea or reason is more of a kind of arranged reasons. A lot of times people just get into a marriage because there is a specific benefit. It could be monetary, it could be immigration based at times, which is more or less, many times it's illegal to do so. But again, there are also legal ways. Like, let's say somebody would think, oh, I love this person anyways, and now the added benefit is that they have a citizenship from a different country and they want me to get that citizenship too. So I'm going to add that to my benefits. But again, at times it can be just arranged for that particular benefit. And also arranged marriages that are really done because maybe some political or influential benefits exist for somebody to marry off their son or daughter to a different influential family member. Again, these are really just very rudimentary, archaic needs that some people believe in, but they do. We cannot necessarily change their belief system, and that is one of the reasons that exist out there. In addition to those three, then we also have something called more like individual needs, and the individual needs just are kind of concocted based on the type of I would say kind of a decision or final analysis that the person has come to. They believe as part of their growth and progress in life, they have come to certain point that they have found the right partner. A lot of times they project lots of good reasons onto that and sometimes bad reasons, but they end up saying, well, yeah, I have found the life partner, the soulmate that I have been looking for. They kind of narrow it down. Yeah, physiologically, physically, culture, maybe stamina, physique, if you will, the power that a person have, or the beauty that a person have, the level of attractiveness, opportunity for, again, creating a new family and so forth. It's a constellation of multiple different things that they put together, and they make up their mind, and a lot of times you see that they do so despite objections from a lot of other people. So even, for instance, religiously, they're not supposed to, let's say, marry outside of their religion, and they don't care. They say that doesn't matter. Family members don't agree. They don't care. They say that doesn't necessarily matter. Other benefits are not in place. At times, a person may kind of marry someone who doesn't have a job, doesn't have an education, doesn't have more or less anything, but they just fall in love with that person and they believe this is the right person for them. So almost at times in kind of obvious deficit, facing that obvious deficit or series of deficits, a person has made up their mind based on their own internal individual decision-making analysis that they have arrived at. That would be a fourth category that they usually come to terms with and then make a major decision that this is it, I'm going to go for it. It's very much a personal obligation that they feel internally. It's almost like fulfilling something within that is inexplicable. They just cannot describe it much and not fit into any other category. It's very, very individualized. They're quite possessive about it, and they go through with it. And the fifth category would be something that I would really regard as the major mystery and chemistry and very much a subconscious, invisible force that keeps people together and then leads them to marry, which we will talk about later on and I have also created a video about attraction that addresses this. Those are subconscious needs of connecting and reconnecting with almost like an archetype or a persona that we see being reenacted and kind of crystallized and come to life in front of us by being in the presence of a certain person. Now, however, this whole persona or archetype has much more to do with the significant individuals that we grew up with, more or less their personality, perhaps of a mother figure or a father figure or a powerful sibling figure who has created that type of an early impact in our childhood and then found itself in this persona, in this personification of a series of personality characteristics that we have fallen in love with, and suddenly we see this entire fantasy-like type of a match recreated and come to life in our partner that we are interacting with. To give an example, at times people just fall in love with this very much let's say workaholic person. Let's just say on a very benign level, somebody is super workaholic and the partner believes that, wow, I have found the right individual. I can't believe that how good of a match we are. This person is amazing. They're just blowing my mind. I feel so comfortable around them. I feel so peaceful around them. They know exactly what they want, and so forth and so on. However, after many years, and if they came to uh, level of introspection about why they really have gotten into this relationship, they would kind of detect that this person is just reminding them of an early significant role model that they have actually grown up with. For instance, let's say their father or their mother was a workaholic, and they used to take care of the family and kind of exude this loving presence to their child, and that has remained with them, that type of a memory of, you know, a amazing caretaker who is now being again kind of reenacted and recreated right in front of my eyes by the physique and by the presence and by the actions and interactions of this person that I call my soulmate. So in reality, it's not really the person I'm with, it is that persona that I fell in love with, that I project onto the real person in front of me. And we see the proof of that in the minutiae, in the differences at times, the little debates and arguments and kind of clashes and conflicts that they have, where you notice, if you sat down and kind of listened to them, that when they're talking about each other, it's really not talking about the person that is in front of them. At times, the person who feels, you know, unfairly treated or not understood or misunderstood may come up with this explanation that, you know, you're just not understanding me. You don't see me. You're seeing something else. You're responding to an idea of me, but not me. I am different. And there is that resistance from the partner to really see that difference, to accept that difference, to allow that difference to happen. So that would be really the last category. So it's a subconscious reason that people get into. It's that level of attraction that's unspoken, unexplained. That's why they get into that relationship. They can't quite explain it well. And again, no matter what type, what purpose, and what reason there is, people need to verify those. They will need to double check these with their partner and kind of get on the same page. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for the other video on structure, hierarchy, and boundaries.